Yes, I'm very well, thank you.
What was it about Stanley, A Man of Variety that sort of enticed you to get involved with it as well, like not just star in it but help co-write it as well?
Well, nothing attracted me about it because it didn't exist.
Okay.
No, because Steve, the director, brought me a script, totally different thing that we didn't do. I rejected it. I didn't want to do it. But in the process of rejecting that the second time, having read it again, we took one premise from it, which was the man in a hole trying to get out of it, incarcerated, and we built the entire thing around just that simple notion. And then in our conversations over about a year, chatting and then inventing and then talking about what films we liked and what characters that we thought might serve, because I said to him, when I rejected, I said, what if, and it was discussing about this man all alone, this deeply drab, uninteresting non-entity, to be really cruel about him. What is somebody who's so seemingly nondescript got inside them? And then we started to talk about, he had this collection of showbiz memorabilia, and then slowly but surely these characters, we then started talking about what they might be, and then I started doing these characters. Not that I'd known how to do them or spent my time doing it. I played Margaret Rutherford in a Strange Old Television thing a long time before that, and then these characters came along, and then we'd do a little bit and see went away and structured it a little bit, and then we come back and do more, and slowly but surely evolved. This journey started to evolve. This guy whose beloved collection, started to haunt him and demonize and terrify the life out of him, and take this non-entity, as it were, this person of no particular character, through his own life. But of course, what the other thing was that they are all him. So they are. This nondescript man has all this myriad of people in him without even knowing that they're in there himself.
That's brilliant.
Well, that's what, that's how it turned out. Well, I'm glad you think that. so that's how it happened. And then, in a strange way, the character started to dictate which way it was going to go, and then we refined them, and then made sure that every time one came along, that they serve the plot, not just for the hell of it, and they're both a sort of a celebration of these characters, these people I kind of grew up watching, but also a kind of subversion of them. So you're seeing on one side a kind of their entertainment side, but also their, which I always felt when I was a kid watching them, there's a slightly malevolent, slightly grotesque side to them. And it's that side that is prevalent rather than the affable side, or in tandem,
Okay, so you said that obviously you played all of the different personas.
Yeah.
Did you have a particular favourite one that you enjoyed playing the most?
Well, the one that came sort of easiest, I suppose, and mercifully, because she's got the most to say, was Margaret Rutherford. I've played her before, but they were all oddly. Because it's not like I'm not one of those boring actors who goes around doing all these other people. So I had to study them. I had a feeling for them, and I loved them. I had a real feeling. So growing up with watching these, but then Steve Cookson, the director, who I think you might be talking to later, he got a compilation of all these characters when we decided what we might be using. We discarded some as well. We worked on some and then cut some and then added some and didn't use them. But I watched them really, really forensically just before we'd start doing them. And also before we started shooting, part of the shooting process, we workshopped the whole thing for a week intensely, honed the script down a bit, and then also right through the shoot we were rewriting, cutting stuff out, adding jokes, and really, so it was a real working process, a true experimental process that we just let it take its reign, just let our imagination, in connection with our discipline to a certain degree, to keep it as in a narrative, let it have free reign, I should say. But so my favourite, possibly possibly Margaret Rutherford, but I'm quite fond of the Alastair Sim character in his sort of Scrooge, as the ghost of Christmas, past, future and present. There's the mad character in it called, drunk northern character, Frank Randall, who's a comedian that many people even who knew about it never heard of, who's a kind of a strangely manic character, you know. So it's they all have their own. Coward was very difficult to do because he speaks so quickly and he's so sharp and witty, you know. And very, you know, the diction is very well known. So they all had their own challenges. I wouldn't want to make any of them jealous by suggesting my mum was a favourite. They might come and get me. They might start turning up in my life.
So you said the most challenging one was because of the diction. Was that the most challenging one to bring forward, or?
Well, I think it was because also, you know, being he sort of says, you know, he's both, you know, Noel Coward was a great playwright and lyricist, and everything he said was so particularly precise and witty. But in this case, what he's saying is precise and hopefully witty, but it's also quite nasty. He's accusing him of being a non-entity, a nothing, a tiresome. But he's also within that, he's actually showing him how he's going to get out. So he's both malevolent, but also liberating him. So trying to get all these, you know, this fusion of all these things together. So it's a hybrid. So, you know, as I say, it's a subversion of their qualities rather than it's a celebration, but also a subversion of them. You know.
So, what would you say was your favourite moment on the set of Stanley, A Man of Variety? Do you have any particular moments that stand out?
Well, I'll tell you what did happen. It wasn't during the shooting, it was during when we were preparing this shooting in this strange location where we shot the entire thing, which was an old magistrate's court down by Tower Bridge. I think it's now a hotel. It had a whole courtroom, had the cells, and where you see it, that's where we shot the entire thing, then we doubled it up in its house as well. Shot the whole thing in this old Victorian magistrate's court. It had a very, very particular strange atmosphere which sort of imbued is in the film. All them cells where he's in prison, in the basement there's a whole prison area, and all the doors are lined up, and once we were rehearsing, and there's a scene where you see him walking, it's a steady cam shot, which is where you follow him out and he goes into the toilet just before he goes past all the cells. Well, we rehearsed it, walked it round, and then got the cameras up, got the cameras on, and then when we turned over to the action, we went round again, and nobody had been round there, nobody at all. All the doors of the cells were all open. They'd all somehow opened on their own, and these were like thick steel doors. And we said, "Who's joking?" No, and nobody said it. So anything. So there's a spooky, malevolent thing. It's in that. It was down there, and it's managed to introduce itself into the piece.
Ooh.
I know. I remember thinking. I didn't want to dwell on it.
Oh, neither did I. I got chills down my spine.
Well, it did me a bit.
So,
and I spent like a whole 2 days in one of them cells, you know, and having to hang myself in it as well. You know, my characters. You know, I won't give too much away. So anyway, there we are.
Okay, so obviously over your career you have worked with quite a few talented people. Obviously talent does attract talent. So do you have, for lack of better words, do you have a sort of wish list of people that you'd like to work with?
Yeah, there's a few. I'd love to. I mean, two of my favourite actors I've never worked with is Anthony Hopkins and Albert Finney. I'd love to work with the Coen brothers. I really would, very much. I think they're just wonderful geniuses. And Paul Thomas Anderson. You know, so there are loads of people, and then the young upcoming people. You know, it's so healthy to see so much new talent coming along as well. It's you know, given that we're living in a very changing world per se, but the way the media is viewed and how difficult it becomes, how liberating on one level, how restricting on another. So there's some of the old guard and some of the established, you know, avant-garde people, but I never know. That's one of the beauties of being, I suppose, an actor that is, you know, not attached to one particular thing. You never know what's going to happen next. You know, you just don't know who's going to ask, or maybe they won't at all, which is not a very, you know, there's always that, and never doubt there's a wonderful thing, device in the life of an actor that stops actors being too cocksure of themselves and too arrogant. It's called unemployment. A little bout of that knocks any arrogance out of you. I wouldn't prescribe it, but it certainly keeps you humble.
Oh, definitely. So obviously, you've been a part of some big franchises. The main one that pops to mind is Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So how does working on something more independent like Stanley, a man of variety, compare to working on something like that?
Well, obviously, to a certain degree, it's exactly the same. But obviously, because all you're doing is telling the story with a camera and a microphone and to other people to make it all look the way it does. It's only storytelling with these instruments. But of course, with something like Harry Potter, the immense amount of people involved, the thought that's gone into it before, and the amount of money it's going to cost, and the fact that there's a massive studio behind it, tends to dictate a lot of the decisions that are made prior to what's going on the floor. And I'm not saying it erodes independence, because if somebody's clout, like say Coady, would only want to do it if it was done properly, so therefore she has artistic control. But often in a big movie, the non-independent, not always, but sometimes the commercial tail wags the artistic dog, and sometimes the tail is much bigger than the dog, and it's because films cost so much money. People have to make also, in Harry Potter's obviously case, it become a global sensation, but it was still, you know, a work of art that wasn't a ride or a comic so you can't blame the studios choosing films that are based on things that people have heard of, because they need to know if they're going to spend the gross national budget of a small country on a film, they've got to get money back. So, but that doesn't mean the expertise and the desire to make it right, and that's the difference. In the independent world, you get less money, but you get more artistic freedom. But there's still people who put that money and wouldn't mind seeing a bit of it back. It's not a charity. So you are still dictated to by the tail a little bit, but not so heavily. The dog is more important than the tail.
I felt like that analogy, I have to say. So, I'm quite curious, do you have a favourite line or a favourite scene from the film?
Well, it comes back to Margaret Rutherford. I think it's because in a sense she explains where it's all come from, and in that sort of mad eccentric way, she says to him what he doesn't know himself, which is that he decided to choose his multi-personality schizophrenia over the alternative to loneliness of being a nobody. And that's what his problem is, and that to use someone who's that eccentric and that affable and that sort of to say something that sort of profound, and for him to discover it through one of his heroes was something that it was a late entry into the text, but it ties it up a bit, and it was you know, it's risky to have to have so much, because these characters they use language a lot. So to me, that I'm very happy with that area to it. And also when she talks about him killing John Wilson with a chamber pot, that grew out of, in fact, of Margaret Rutherford's own, her family, somebody killed somebody with a chamber pot. So it's a kind of connection with that. It's, you know, it's, tragically, that was something that happened in her own family. So she's become a self, you know, and she's, you're my father, her father, your father, his father. It's kind of taken from a real tragedy, you know. So that's, you know, I'm not offending anybody in the Rutherford family, but that is where it grew from, you know.
Yeah, makes sense. So, what would you say was the biggest challenge in bringing it from the script to screen?
Well, I think Steve's, the director's, great confidence in telling me that I would be able to act with myself. You know, there were certain things I thought, well, you know, how do you do that? I mean, he said, well, obviously you get somebody else, but we're lucky to have a very, very good actor who was employed to come along, and he learnt the lines, and he which was difficult because we often changed them as well, and he played all the characters, you know, that we were writing opposite me, and then he'd swap around, and then he put my costume on, so you see the back of him, and I would. So that was the really, really difficult bit, was to be convincingly talking, you know, to yourself. You know, so there we are. Talk about a film about schizophrenic in a schizophrenic moment. That really was life imitating art, you know.
So it gets a bit too self-aware there.
Well, you know, it's technically getting it right, you know, and also sometimes, you know, in the case of Alastair Sim character with the top hat, we made him another 4 foot taller. So and then there's a guy who plays the sort of Igor character from Frank. He's down here, so you know, and it was actually all about you know, so it's different angles, and then you know, so that side of it technically, but Steve, the director, was so on top of all that, he storyboarded it all, and as much as we were being inventive, we had a very strong and a very tight, good little crew that were very, you know, there all the time when we needed them to be, and so luckily Steve had worked that out technically. You know, there was little moments of invention, like when, as well, we had to work out where this George Formby character puts the cloth over his head and pulls it, and there he's, you know, so there's a few things we had to do that were good old fashioned, was what my grandmother used to say was trick photography. Whenever I was scared in a horror film, she always said, "Don't worry, Timmy, it's trick photography." Have you obviously seen the film?
I have, yeah, I really liked it.
Did you? Oh, good. Considering you wouldn't know any of them.
No, I do actually. Well, yeah. Well, I used to live with my gran before I moved in.
Oh, lovely.
So
yeah.
like, she was really into all the road shows, so I used to watch them all with her. And I could see where they were coming from, especially what you meant about them being a little bit darker as well.
Yeah, well, when you're a kid and you're watching them, you see there is a slightly disturbing side to them, isn't there?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's lovely chatting to you.
Nice to talk to you. Think, Stanley, into the abyss of your guilt. I've changed my mind. I don't want to die. I want to live.
Thank you for watching The Fan Carpet. If you like this video, be sure to click that thumbs up button at the bottom of your screen. And also be sure to subscribe to the Fan Carpet YouTube channels. They're absolutely free and so much fun too. Be sure to check out the official website, thefancarpet.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date with reviews, competitions, the latest news, and so much more.